All right. Welcome everybody to Persian Perspective. Today,
Persian perspective.
you're a little late. You're a little late.
I'm tired, man. Come on, give me a break. It's been a long day. It's been a long day.
Yeah, we'll be talking about Dave Chappelle's special today and all the fucking controversy that got out of that.
Oh, when do we even start?
First, first of all, let's start with the fact: did you enjoy the special? And out of 1 to 10, what do you rate it?
uh, so it's not even linear, is the problem. I suppose it starts out at a 3 to 10, then a 5 to 10, then a 7 to 10. And then towards the end, it gets to a 10-10, and then it dips down again to an 8-10. Right? So I don't even know how to rate it because it is difficult to give you an average because it's not even a linear progression of quality.
Yeah.
Now,
it wasn't his best work.
Talking from, yeah, you're absolutely right. Because it's like we've seen equanimity and the bird whatever, and we've seen, thank you, the bird revelation, and we've seen killing them softly and all of these other quintessentially classic comedies, Sticks and Stones, and we've seen the mastery at work, right? You know, we've even seen the whole kick him in the pussy.
Yeah.
And then the punch, and then the setup comes before the setup comes after the punchline, which is brilliant. But in this case, I think Dave was so concerned with, either putting forward his opinion about his controversy, his friction with the trans community, and trying to portray himself as not hateful, and trying to portray himself as, the victim of cancel culture, that he neglects to be funny.
Yeah.
Which is, and I'm not saying he isn't funny in this, but it's clear that at some point he's more concerned with acquiring clapter than he is with actually telling the joke.
Yeah, it goes to the TED Talk around.
Yeah, it gets a little bit TED Talky. I get it. You're trying to make a point.
Yeah.
Right. But it's 2021, my dude. And in 2020, a ton of shit happened. The likes of which we have never seen before. There was very little talk about the pandemic. There was very little talk about, there was no follow-up on Black Lives Matter.
Joe Biden.
There was no talk about Joe Biden and about or Afghanistan. There was very little. You didn't even address the fact that the U.S. Air Force just straight out openly said, yeah, sometimes we see UFOs. We just don't know what they are, but we know they're there.
Yeah.
Like, freaking
there was
UFOs.
Enough material in this 2 years that it could have been talked about. But this one, it was just LGBT it's LGBT and space Jews.
Yes, LGBT and space Jews. Now, the space Jew thing, I'm like, look, if you want to talk about the Israeli-Palestine issue, talk about the Israeli-Palestine issue, right? Because that feels like you want to talk about it, but you're too chicken shit to talk about it. So you drop a metaphor or an analogy about the whole conflict, and then you just don't address it afterwards. And it riled up a few Jewish fans, even the ones who were pro-Palestine, because it's like there was so little setup and context to what you were doing. It offended people more than it made them think and come over to your side, which is a thing that Dave Chappelle used to be really good at. It's the hallmark of Louis C.K.
You didn't like the bit. You felt like it was
You know what? I'm happy that an American comedian understands how absurd the premise of subjugating an ethnic minority is under the reason of this land belongs to us, when the same people experience the exact same things for the exact same reason. Right?
Yeah.
It's like you didn't learn from your own oppression.
Yeah.
But it's like it doesn't fit in the rest of your rant about trans people hating you. Like, well, where does this all fit? Like you had a thing to say,
We had
and
that
now it's like,
we had that conversation regarding, sorry to break your chain of thought, but it's like
no, it's fine.
we had that conversation regarding like, okay, look, Dave Chappelle is worshipped by all comedians. Like
Yeah,
you, me, Hannah Gatsby doesn't like him, but
sure.
all that, but it's everybody loves him as somebody who's well established, has established that he's an insanely charismatic
Yeah,
public speaker and fantastic storyteller. And like the thing is that, and I'm a massive fan of his. And it took me 3 watches of his special because to take a step back, and it was actually during our WhatsApp talk that
yeah,
I had to like suddenly mentally had to step back and out of my fandom of his
yeah,
and be like, all right, but was this something good as a special itself? Like as a stand-up comedy. It's called a stand-up comedy special. That's what it is.
yeah,
Now, if you have that label, the label of comedy means that you have to laugh or enjoy the obscurity of it to some sense. It needs to have that. It needs to have that.
yeah,
The claps are for a public speech,
yeah,
which is what this special had more than laughter. It was chuckles with claps. That's what I was
yeah,
feeling.
yeah,
Yeah, and that's what I was going like. It's not wrong what he did. He can't like you. He has reached the fuck you point of as an artist. He can do whatever the fuck he likes, and people are gonna show up and they're gonna pay good money to see him do it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
but
they're well within the rights to do that. Yeah.
yeah, but was this a stand-up comedy? Because did you read Hannah Gatsby what he wrote about what is it? Is it a he or she or they? What's her pronoun?
It's a she. It's a
Yeah,
she. Hannah
the
Gatsby identifies as female.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what she wrote about that recently?
Yeah. I mean, I think what she was really more mad about was the head of Netflix using her as a reason to justify Dave Chappelle. And
Yeah.
before that, she was just perfectly quiet,
No,
right?
she was perfectly quiet. She didn't
But
really
it
mention anything about the
became,
special.
but
But
what was really interesting was how what seemed to really irritate her was how by being included into the defense of Dave Chappelle, she seemed to have been implying that she was getting some collateral damage hitting her way.
yeah,
Because now it would seem that your
she's
your
getting
people
hate
invested.
messages.
Yeah. That seemed very weird to me. But
The
it's not
I don't
something
know
I
if it
haven't seen
happened.
before.
It's not out of the realm of possibility. That's one. It's
Hmm.
very much possible that she has got those messages. I didn't go and check her Twitter or Instagram to see people telling her to go fuck
Yeah.
herself. Yeah, but she did say it, and honestly, from what I've seen, people might act up anything to sound from the cancel culture. What I've seen is that even if you tell them like, "Hey,
Mm,
didn't like what you did," that can count as a hate crime on their end. Because so far, I've seen
sure.
people to be far more civil. That's what I've seen. If she has got it, I'm very sorry that I hear it. But there's 2 points of it. One is she mentions how much she got paid, and two, there's a point in her speech that says, "Oh, all right, here it is." It said, yeah, she says you. Oh, yeah, Dave Shep. Now I have to deal with even more of the hate and anger that Dave Chappelle fans like to unleash on me every time Dave gets $20 million to process his emotionally stunted partial worldview. And the part that got me
Yeah.
was that every time Dave gets $20 million to process his emotionally stunted partial worldview,
Yeah.
So it's no
Which,
longer a stand-up.
yeah.
She's referring to the fact that it's his view of the world. And to be honest with you, it does sound like it's his view of the
Yeah.
world. He's being very honest about that.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, Dave Chappelle's specials have always been about his experiences as a black person,
Yeah.
right? That's where a lot of the comedy comes from the pain and trauma of just being black in
Yeah.
America. And obviously, a lot of black comedians joke about that because how else are you going to process?
Yeah.
And there is something to be said about white privilege within the queer community, how queer people are an oppressed minority until they have to be white again. That's very telling.
Yeah.
But I think this is an example of Dave having not done the research deeply enough, because what happens is those members of the LGBT community who are white
Yeah.
Also tend to be really privileged.
Mhm.
Sometimes those make up the majority of the turfs that he says he's a team of.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. So like all of the any lesbians that are in the turf community tend to be from that section of the queer community.
Yeah.
So it's kind of ironic, you know, I can't make, you know, you criticize a white person and then they change the gender now. I
Yeah.
can't make fun of you anymore. But the thing is,
That
a
was
lot of the
very-
time,
that was the one of the that one was a very good bit.
that was kind of funny.
Yeah.
But I think the way how the trans community sees itself is that they're not nearly as privileged as Dave would like them to as Dave would like to portray them as. That can be a bit of a problem. I get it though. I get it. You have been an oppressed minority for a very long time, 400 years. And the progress that the black community is making is dwarfed in comparison to the queer community.
Yeah.
And I would wager to say that's in part because the queer community has white people in it. That's just my theory.
Yeah.
But
pretty much. If there was trans black people would care less.
yeah, but the thing is, the black trans people are just as angry at Dave about this as the white trans people. So, you know, I don't think they appreciate having to be dragged into this topic either, because it's this thing of where, you know, it's bad enough that I'm black in America. I'm also trans. So now I'm getting hate from both ends.
Yeah.
Like white America doesn't like me. Straight America doesn't like me. And now if I'm not careful, I could be getting heat from TERFs, a lot of whom have lesbians who are privileged, which you know would have been like friends of J.K. Rowling, basically. So it's like, but here's the thing. Now I'm very conflicted because it's this thing of where, number one, was his admission of being on Team TERF an advocation of TERFs, or was it a confession that he gets where they're coming from? Because he preludes the thing with the phrase, "I'm not saying that trans women aren't who they say they are. However," what I'm saying is, or was it a confession, right? Was Dave just confessing to the audience that I know that's the reality, but this is still kind of how I believe. And it seemed to me, and maybe I'm being too charitable to the man, is he just processing how he feels on stage? before it's fully formed.
That's kind of well, that's one thing, because when he started talking, and now he has reached the point that you can't tell if he written a material and is performing it on stage, or is he on the stage and just doing it on the spot. There's that
Yeah.
feeling to that. That's one. Number two, I don't think he admitted to anything. I don't think he admitted
Yeah.
to being a turf. I don't think he admitted. I didn't hear him admitting to anything. Three,
Right.
I think it's his distaste. Look, like people say he had hate speech. He didn't have
Yeah.
hate speech, which those things kind of drive me up the wall, because it's like, how you guys can label whatever that doesn't agree with you as hate speech, or like hate speech is for me to tell you that, all right, everybody, all of you should go fuck yourselves and you guys are going to go to hell, and that's hate speech and you're not allowed to be hired. Now that's not just a hate speech, that's an act of hatred, because I'm
Right.
not, now I'm also like
Right.
handicapping your ass. His thing was I feel like he has a distaste, and I understand where he's coming from. He has a distaste for victimhood,
Yeah.
that it has, by what I have seen, there is a huge victim card that's being played by the LGBTQ community, that whatever happens, doesn't matter what you say against them, not even against them, just in opposition or of what they've said. Doesn't
Yeah.
you don't have to be there's no hatred in it. It's even a question. Like J.K. Rowling didn't do anything she was just asking a question. She was just proposing something. She wasn't hating on transgenders. They would just pull out their victim card. And his thing is always like, look, I am black and I'm going through I've gone through shit. I didn't even came to this land by my own free will.
Yeah.
And he says, what was it? He said that why is it so? Caitlyn Jenner became the woman of the year the first year she became a woman. And it was very easy for her to change her gender than it was for Muhammad Ali to change his name.
Yeah. So a lot of people have addressed that comparison by simply saying that, well, Caitlyn Jenner changed her gender in 2000. When was it? I forget already.
2018?
2018, 19, but probably 18. Earlier than that. I can't
18,
even remember.
18, 17. My timeline has been fucked since COVID.
But Cassius Clay changed his name to Muhammad Ali in 1965.
Yeah.
So obviously there's a time differential there. Although as a metaphor, rather than, as a historical example, it sort of makes some sense, in the sense that it's a lot harder for a black person to do something radical than it is for,
for white
white members of the LGBT to do pretty much anything.
Yeah.
But it took time. Yeah. It took time. It took Stonewall. He references Stonewall. It took all of this, stuff to happen before they could finally enter into the mainstream and stuff. And even then, and people go around, and you still have trans people getting killed. That's not to say black people don't get killed every single day. You can still get trans people getting killed. So it's just, I'm very torn on the whole thing. And another issue that seemed to bother me just a little bit was, okay, is the outrage from Dave Chappelle legitimate? Maybe it very likely is, or is this like a hate mob? Because I've seen some genuinely sincere members of the queer community get dragged on Twitter for something they did or said.
Yeah.
Just dragged. Some of my favorite YouTubers just had hate heaped upon them like you wouldn't believe. And these people have been advocating for their community for the longest time.
But you say one wrong thing, they'll drag you down and beat you up.
That's, well, online anyway.
Yeah.
But And I know it's
ruin your
easy to
career.
dismiss when it happens to Dave Chappelle and all of his rich friends because they're rich and famous and nobody's ever really going to cancel them. They're
Yeah,
sort of like
they're
bullet resistant to
uncancelable.
that. Yeah. But it happens to like smaller content makers as well. Some of my favorite YouTubers, Natalie Wynn, who runs a channel called ContraPoints, and Lindsay Ellis and Sarah Z, and all of these other people who are either trans or bi, and they just posit an example or ask a question on Twitter, or they share an experience about how, there's this weird paradox where if you're a trans lady and you pass and you go to like a really conservative town, people just treat you like a woman. But when you're in this hyper woke space and she's there as a trans woman, suddenly everybody has to go around announcing their pronouns because she's there, and it's really uncomfortable,
Yeah.
and it's not organic anymore because it's a system in place. And she got a lot of hate for that, like a ton of hate, because she's sharing her personal experience, but it's like, oh,
But
you're
it
giving
doesn't count.
ammunitions.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's more like what the queer community is really afraid of and really angry about isn't whether what you say is right or wrong.
Mm.
It's whether this shit that you say can be used by bigots as weaponry against you. Because immediately what happens afterwards is that when Dave goes on his special and says, I'm Team Turf,
Yeah.
nobody who's anti-trans is going to sit around and go, is this a confession or an advocation of turfhood? They're going to take it wholesale and go, he's one of us now. Yay.
Yeah.
And then when the trans people are telling him to shut the fuck up, you're going to get us in trouble. Then the turfs come around and say, see, they're trying to cancel Dave Chappelle. They're trying to cancel Dave Chappelle. This means trans people are evil. So it's this whole sort of communication war that's happening that we don't see,
Yeah.
because we're not in the trenches of what queer people have to fight against,
Yeah.
and we're just here trying to understand shit. Like, we're still trying to understand the queer community. We're still trying to understand trans people. We're still trying to navigate the complex labyrinth of, who trans people are, what trans people do, how should we treat them, etc. There seems to be so many rules. There seems to be so many taboos. It's very, very complicated. And then you get blindsided by somebody who happens to be queer or who happens to be trans, and they had a bad day, or the fact that they're shitty they just happen to be shitty people, and they blindside you.
Yeah.
But they do it under the banner of social justice, and you're like, oh shit, this social justice shit is evil. And now you think, and now you're like, okay, well, who's right here,
There,
or who's good here? We don't even know half the time, and we're still trying to learn.
there's that
And it's
aspect that Dave Chappelle also points at, which I also like been looking at, because it's like I think it was in Sticks and Stones he mentions like you guys are talking about this and that while I don't know how many states in America actually passed the most stringent abortion laws ever, anti-abortion laws. Because that's something that gets to me at times. It's like, look, okay, people are picking on. Here's what a comedian, in my mind, is someone with an immense amount of balls, or someone who's mentally a little bit off, or someone who's really you can't be a straight person. I'm not talking about being a gay person. I'm saying you can't be a mentally able person to be going up on stage. You need to have want a validation and exercising some demons. At least the good comedians that I've seen have that with them, that they go up there. You need to be a little cuckoo to go up there and try to make people laugh. Okay?
Yeah.
And the thing that that comedian's dream is that I hope to be able to stand in front of everybody else, stand in front of crowds, and able to make my living, try to make people laugh. That's what a comedian is in my head. That's what I think is a or pretty standard definition of what a comedian and a comedian role is. I'm gonna write something. I'm gonna exercise my demons in some senses. I'm gonna go and try to make my life and living based on if people laugh at whatever the fuck that comes out of my mouth or not. The things that I'm gonna say are gonna be abstracts and exaggerations, and maybe not gonna make real much sense, but they're gonna be funny, and hopefully people will laugh and have a good time. That's what they aim to do. And people decide to pick on that guy because it's so easy to pick on that guy because he's the guy on stage with a mic alone.
Right.
And what he says doesn't count as joke. That's why, like, the partial part of the Hannah Gatsby's thing is that his view of the world. Yeah, Dave's what he was exercising wasn't just a joke, was his view. It didn't sound like a joke. It was it doesn't go like, hey, two Jews walk into a bar. That's when you hear that, you immediately know this is a joke. This is two Jews really didn't walk into a bar.
Yeah.
So that line for Dave seemed to be blurred there. But the fact that people like decide to pick on comedians left and right instead of like picking on a CEO of a company that doesn't want to hire a transgender, or some senator who's homophobic, yet he's a homosexual himself and he gets caught getting ass fucked by 5 other dudes.
Yeah.
That doesn't really get as much attention because it's so much easier to fuck a comedian. And it's so much more fruitful because like, look, like Hannah Gatsby at the end of the thing, he wrote hashtag comedy is dead, hashtag I killed it. Like, yeah, right.
I mean, that's a little presumptuous coming from Hannah Gatsby. She did one special. She did one special where she announced that she's quitting comedy. Then she makes a whole bunch of money. And then she does another special. So, but that having been said, we already did just say that comedy is exaggeration and sometimes just outright lies. So she's allowed to do that. Yeah. I suppose if you want to call Hannah Gatsby's Nanette a comedy special.
Yeah.
That's just the thing, right? You can't say that your thing is not a comedy special, but then use all of the tools and then expect us to take you seriously. Like, come on now, we're going to pick you apart if you do that. But sorry, I've lost my train of thought. It's a lot to process, honestly, because again, I'm just very torn between Dave probably not having done enough research on the topic to even talk about.
Yeah.
Maybe he could have gotten some pointers from actual trans comedians, you know, and I appreciate that his ode to Daphne Dorman was really heartwarming and touching.
It was.
Even if some people say it's like, you know, I got one trans friend, therefore I can make jokes about trans people. But it's clear that for all of his flaws, he's trying. Yeah, and it can be very frustrating and scary.
And he seemed like he really cares about what the fuck people think about it. Like, he doesn't want to hurt anybody with his comedy.
No, because here's the thing. He did say that he left $50 million on the table because he thought that white people were laughing too hard at black jokes. Right. And I know a lot of people say, if you were so afraid about getting a mouthful of blood laughs from white people when you're doing black race jokes, why haven't you considered that you might be doing the same with trans people? But it seems pretty clear to me that if you are willing to leave $50 million on the table, and then disappear for years on end and then relegate yourself to a quiet life in Ohio, it's clear that even if your actions are clumsy and dumb, your intentions are good. And I think some people should at least give him the benefit of the doubt. I understand that the queer community and trans people particularly are afraid that what Dave says will be taken either in or out of context and be used against them.
Yeah.
Lord knows it's happening already. The Terps already using Dave Chappelle as their mascot. And, you know, Dave Chappelle's fans who happen to be bigots are now using Dave Chappelle as a buttering ram against the queer community.
Yeah.
But I think that when you're an artist, there's only so much you can do to tell people how to interpret shit.
Yeah.
Like you can put a preface behind every single joke and tell people this is not really how I think, but
It's funny.
I also feel in this other thing, and I'm going to make a joke about Beyond Pussy because deep down inside I'm just 12 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically that's what it is. I think he had a potato joke punchline that he really wanted to use because deep down inside I think he's just terribly immature. But then he couldn't figure out a smart way to do it, so this was the conceit, right?
Yeah.
That's what it is. That's the danger in joke making. You have an idea in your head that's really funny, and then people take it literally, and then it can be, and then now you're the bad guy. I remember quite distinctively, you know, our friend Prakash Daniel.
Yeah.
He did the joke about Indian Jesus.
Oh, okay.
Now, Indian Jesus became a bit that was used in the marketing for the Joke Factory. It's a brilliant bit. It's a brilliant little piece of like descriptive storytelling as a joke. What Jesus would look like if he was Indian.
Yeah.
And he only did the joke because somebody told him he looks like Indian Jesus because he's a Christian, right? And his experience with Christianity is weird because his whole family converted overnight, basically.
Yeah.
So this is his way of processing his experience with Christianity. But the hate he got from like aunties and uncles in Christian WhatsApp groups and
Really?
the police report. Yeah. And then
That explains a lot.
And then the police reports came.
Police reports?
You didn't know?
No, I didn't know.
People filed police reports over
No
Indian
wonder
Jesus.
he always tries to avoid any controversial material.
There you go.
Now I understand. Like he really tries to stay on the between, tries to avoid, because I don't know, he has such a bad experience.
Right? No, he's had a couple of bad experiences with people. He's had bad experiences with people who took umbrage to his racial humor, even if he's talking about his own race,
did he get
his
arrested?
own religion, you know, and he's even been blindsided. No, but he had to like answer for it at the station or something. I don't know the full details, but suffice to say, it was a very precarious time.
Yeah.
For him. And it's like you have this silly idea in your head and you want to share it with the world, and it makes people laugh. But people can take it very literally and you know, attack you for it out of fear that you're making them look bad in public.
Yeah.
And it's not just a comedy thing. In Malaysia, there's this really respected movie called Jagat. And Jagat is about how life is for the Indian community at the working class level, right? Exposure to crime, exposure to social ills, what it feels like to be a youth in this community, and how the force of bad influences is magnetic when you don't have anything else in your life to depend on. But the Indian community hated that movie, even though it was getting awards abroad, because the Indian community didn't want Jagat to make the rest of them look bad, because they thought of it as airing out dirty laundry. And in a way, I feel that what Dave was doing, whether it was good or not, or whether it was well researched or not, I don't think it was. And I think both you and I can agree that it wasn't his best work.
Yeah.
I feel what has happened is that both his defenders and his protractors uh, have taken him quite literally, very literally,
Yeah.
and have either turned him into a god or turned him into a demon.
People forgot that he's a comedian. That's all he is.
People forgot he's a comedian. Yeah, that's kind of it.
Sure,
Just
right.
one more thing before I gotta go
Yeah, I know.
to
you need
really
to go.
illustrate this point. Alan Moore wrote Watchmen, right?
Yeah.
And the main character in that was Rorschach.
Yeah.
Alan Moore intended for Rorschach to be a nut job. He wanted to take a character that was like Batman or The Question and put him in a real world setting, because his view of Batman was that Batman was basically a right-wing fascist. And in real life, such a person would be a complete nutcase. Those were his exact words. He would be a nutcase.
Yeah.
But he made Rorschach the main character. And the problem with that was people thought that by virtue of Rorschach being the main character, he was the person that they were supposed to root for and that his beliefs were correct. But that was not his intention.
Yeah. Interesting.
And
It
so
wasn't
at
his
the end of
intention.
it was never his intention for Rorschach to be the good guy. Rorschach
Yeah,
was a sociopathic maniac who just happened to be a very good a very good investigator,
Yeah.
who was the best at what he did to uncover the mystery of the comedian's death. That was it. It was never an avocation of his beliefs, his philosophies, or his viewpoints. But people took him literally.
Yeah.
And then the next thing you know, Rorschach is lauded as the hero, and then he becomes a bit of like a
Martyr.
right-wing mascot. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Alan Moore is left-wing.
Interesting.
Alan Moore is
I
a
didn't know.
liberal.
Fuck. I think
That's why
that's
him and Frank Miller don't get along.
Oh, Frank Miller to me is I as much as I love Sin City, that guy
Yeah.
for me, like I don't know if it's I matured or something, but like looking back and I said that guy portrayed Iranians, any ugly person in 300
Yeah.
is a black dude, an African black dude.
Yeah.
With even though Xerxes is black, even though like later I don't know they try to clean it up.
Yeah.
Is a black dude and portrayed us as in a massive propaganda piece that's all
Yeah.
right. I was a kid. I looked at the movie. I didn't care for it because I couldn't understand the magnitude of an effect that can have on somebody.
Yeah.
For me, it was cool. I was like, oh, it's cool
Right.
action scenes. But at the same time, now I'm looking at it like this cocksucker went on and blatantly shit on a piece that can potentially, for Americans at least, that could actually be fact.
Yeah.
Because I'm sorry to say, but they're not the sharpest tool in the tool shed. Okay.
Yeah.
And they're very actually easily influenced by their media. And fuck him. Because it's like
Yeah.
people think this is Sparta is a cool thing to say now. But yeah, I don't want to go off the tangent on 300. But yeah, I understand now that I did not know that he and Alan Moore did not get along.
Yeah.
But that speaks a lot because Alan Moore is kind of a hero to me. Because for me, it's like I love he's a modernist shaman.
Yes, basically. But to pull it back to Dave Chappelle, right now we have a situation where to us as comedy fans, Dave Chappelle is Alan Moore.
Yeah.
But what I think the trans community is really afraid of is Dave Chappelle as Frank Miller.
And I think we can end it on that. That's poetic. Yeah. Wow. Nice one. All right, fuckers. Go watch Dave Chappelle's special and make your own judgment on it. And thank you, Raki, for this talk. Anything? Do you have any shows that you want to promote or anything? You're going to be doing stand-up anytime soon?
I will try to get on stand-up on Wednesdays and Saturdays. at the Crack House Wednesday nights at 9 o'clock, and open mics on Saturday at 5 o'clock, because that's when all of the open mics and the comedies are happening. And try and attend the shows on the weekend. They're very good. We're collating a bunch of headliners and opening acts from the newbies of the scene, because we can't get any foreign acts now.
Yeah.
So we're trying to nurture new talent.
That's very cool.
And if
Okay.
you would like to try it out, please contact the Crack House. They give you 3 minutes. Who knows? You might be the next Dave Chappelle.
Maybe. Is it the open mics you said move to Saturdays 5 o'clock?
There's 2 now. So it's Wednesdays 9 o'clock and Saturdays 5 o'clock.
That's awesome. So, all right, guys, check out Crack House Comedy in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And thank you, Rakib. This was a very nice talk. Love the metaphors,
Thank you.
dude.
Thank you for having me. Cheers.
Cheers, man. Take care.
Cheers.